Hello and welcome to Colleague 7 Sprint Review for 18.10.01. This will cover the work undertaken between the 2nd of October to the 15th of October. So starting with our sprint goal, and for this sprint our aim has been to complete the work required for moving email sending into the background service for optimized performance and to conduct a review on the Azure API management service. Looking at the high-level items and to explain further, in this sprint, we've been able to finish moving the email sending features of Colleague 7 into a background service. This was a carryover from the previous sprint and is in line with our project to move process-heavy functionality out of the UI, which in turn will improve user experience and system performance. I'll give a demonstration on this update shortly. We've established a proof of concept API for candidate creation. This is to accommodate third-party integrations and will be the building blocks to Colleague 7 establishing an external API for developers. The next stage will be to finalize the API in a further dev item before launching the API for third parties to use. We've updated the update existing candidate feature, which is used when parsing a CV and updating an existing record. Previously, this feature had some issues, but we've also introduced an update all option as well to help improve the speed in which a user can update a record. We've updated the add option partial view on the search so that this uses a view which scrolls down from above to look up for additional records. Previously this feature would take the user to a selection screen, which wasn't ideal. Again, I'll give a demonstration on what I mean by this shortly. We've updated the history log, which is created by the interview workflow to include the interview type, whether that be first interview or second interview and so on. We've updated the reports interface so that the date period hides the date range if the user selects to search on this week, month or year. The spec CV sent history text has been updated to include the contact details, and the system history types that are associated with that have been updated to clearly advise the method a CV has been sent. We've increased the width of the templates area to help aid template work in this section. We've added the date last viewed as a column in recent items, and we've written an SMS activity report so that you can see which users have sent SMS messages within a date range. We'll now go through a brief demonstration on the key features from this sprint. Okay, so the first point to cover, and it's really the main item that's been worked on over the course of the past two sprints, is the way in which emails are being sent from Colleague and will be sent from Colleague 7 moving forwards post your upgrade. So just to cover, obviously, the sending of an email from a individual entity record. From this perspective, there's not going to be a huge difference from a user's perspective. Obviously, the email form will appear. You'll have your options as you would expect. We'll enter in subject, put some sample body text, hit send, and the sending process goes. Now, what you'll probably find is that sending process on hit and send will be faster than it was perhaps previously, and that is because when you're hit and send, it's going off to the background service to be processed in a background mechanism queuing service. So the email is still sent, it still goes out in prompt time, but essentially from the UI's perspective, it doesn't actually have to process the sending of that email. You don't have that delay of within the interface it dealing with that. It sort of delivers that send request to the queue, and off it goes. So from an individual records perspective, that's as per normal. Moving on to from bulk sending, because this is really where the kind of key change, if you like, would come into effect. I'll just open up an example search result that I've primed really for this demonstration. And what you can see with this method, when we select all these records and hit email, the process of sending the email, obviously, in terms of its use of templates, merge fields, and the sending mechanism is still, from a UI perspective, all the same. But from the actual, let me just put in a test here. But from the actual perspective of the user when they hit send with this would be to 5, 10, 15, 100 individuals. On hitting send, the sending process is instant, because again, on hit and send, it's processing the records, putting them into a background service, and then that service obviously manages the sending of the emails. Now, with a bulk send, what we obviously want to do is advise with regards to the successful send of that bulk send, and also advise of any instances where there were complications or issues with sending to certain email addresses, perhaps. So the send process will happen as you would expect it to, but on completion of the send, and as you sort of navigate around, what you'll see is a notification appearing, as it's just appeared here, to advise that basically the status of that bulk email, whether it was sent successfully, and in this case, bulk email successfully sent to 3 records, or whether or not there was a problem in that process. So that's it. That's the process working with everything being fine. What I wanted to demonstrate is a scenario where it obviously didn't go through okay. Now for that, what I'm going to do is deny consent to this record. Because as part of the sending process, it does check on the GDPR status of the record, and in that scenario, obviously the idea being is this record should now fail to send. So if I open up this search result again, bring through that search result. And this is the candidate record that we've just denied consent against. So what I'd like to do is obviously select all, send an email. Again, we'll say this test email again. Hit send, off it goes. And to avoid complications, I'll just mark that one as red just so that it's clear that's from the old notification. And then what we'll see is the new notification come through, and what it should do is advise that there was a failure on one of the records, and specifically what that failure was. So we see that notification coming through. And what you can see here is you've got the bulk email successfully sent to 2 records, but failed to send to 1 record. Obviously, these numbers will update to reflect where the issue was. And then you've got an option to download an error report here, which is obviously what you're going to want to do to be able to understand which records actually had complications. So if we click on clicking download error report, you get this text file. If we open this text file, 2 things really. One, obviously it gives you the email addresses where there was an issue, and it will give you a reason as to what that issue was. In this instance, it's obviously advising that the recipient denied GDPR consent, but it could be an issue actually more an infrastructural level, that the domain was rejected, the email address was invalid, any number of issues that may occur as part of a bulk sending process. But also what it gives is an email reference number. This is very useful from a support perspective in terms of being able to view the queue and be able to view the specifics of the bulk send that was processed. So it gives us a full audit trail to be able to determine if there are any complications when you are bulk sending, if there are scenarios where emails are failing to send and it's unclear as to why that happened. But the way in which this is now being processed in terms of the queue method has been done purposely to work as best as possible with the API controls with Office 365, and to ensure as best as we can between that relationship that there's a minimal instance of emails failing to go through due to whatever reasons that can occur between 2 interfaces interacting with each other. So it's a far stabler email sending mechanism. So that's the key update as part of this sprint. Staying with the search, the next item to cover is the add option that's within the search area. So this option here for add. So this is available whenever you have a search result from within the search area. I've run a small search here to bring back 6 results for the show results there. those will then come through. And what you've always had is an option here when you hit add to add to these records. So if you wanted to save this search result and then add to it over and over with additional records, perhaps building your own hot list of certain types of records that relate to a certain subject. But what used to happen is you hit add, it would open up in this scenario, a candidate selection screen, and then you do the search in there, and that can obviously be quite disruptive to the user, and it's not really clean workflow that we wanted to basically run with longer term. So what happens now when you hit add is that it runs a partial view, which should be very familiar with how you see it working throughout the rest of the system. You hit add, it brings down an option to look up records. You can then do that search, hit or select a record, and on hitting select there, the additional record is added to the search result. And that's the same in terms of workflow wise for the candidate, the company, and the contact. We don't have this option yet for the requirements. You do have the option to do an add option in the requirement, but that will take you to the requirement selection screen. That's the reason why we don't have that option in requirement, is because we haven't got a partial view yet equivalent for that type of entity. We will be resolving that over the course of the coming weeks, and then the idea will be to incorporate that as part of the add option for requirement, and then that will be one of the last areas in the system where when you're looking up for records, when you're within workflow, it keeps you in that record, it keeps you in that workflow, and this is one of the last areas where that was an issue for us. But that's the update that was made in this sprint. Okay, so the next point to cover relates to the update existing candidate feature that's available off the CV parser. To best demonstrate this, if I just parse a CV quickly, and obviously as part of the parsing process, what it will also do is perform a duplicate check across the candidate entity list, looking for records that match the same forename, surname, email address, or both email addresses, the mobile number, and as part of that listing, it will then bring up, if it finds anything that matches, it will bring up some potential duplicates found and giving you the option to view those as a warning. So if you hit view duplicates, it will then bring those through. You then have the option to, on selection of a duplicate, if you've established that it is a duplicate record to the candidate you've just parsed, you'll have these options that appear. So just to do it again, you have these options that appear here, which is to attach to the selected candidate. So you can attach the CV to the selected candidate, or you've got an option here to update selected candidate. So if you hit update selected candidate, that then brings you through into this window, and this was the area that's had basically the work delivered to it. So there was a bug in this area in relation to selecting certain fields. So if you were to select specifically certain rows, what we were seeing is on selection of ticking that, different rows beneath it would disappear almost at the same time or at the same time, and that was obviously just a failure in terms of how it's supposed to be designed to work. The idea is that if you want to update specific columns here, you've got the current value, which is going on within the current record, and then you've got the new value, which is obviously the parsed value. And in an instance where the new the field value is blank, it's pulling through the existing value, and then you just got then the ability to be able to update that record as you want to, just to individually update fields. What we've introduced now, we've obviously fixed all of that so it works as you'd expect it to on a per row basis. You can also pass blank fields as well, but we've also implemented an update all option as well. So if the new values that have been parsed were all basically you're content with all of those being the new data that you want to hold against that candidate record, you can just hit update all, and it'll update the entire record. Also on the attached documents, it will pull through the document name as the description by default. So again, you can just hit attach documents, and then just hit attach, and it will attach the file. You've also got the option here of default, of ticking that so this becomes the new default document. You can hit attach there, and obviously successfully attaches the document to the record. There was also a bug in relation to assigning default CV here, in that it would create instances where you'd have multiple default documents against the candidate. So that's also been fixed as well. But then obviously you have the option to go to the record. I did it through right click there, but you can obviously just click on it as well, and that will take you to the candidate record, showing you the information that obviously that's been pulled through, and obviously the document, the associated document has come through and is now the default document against the record. But that's the update that we've made against the update existing candidate feature. Okay, so just covering some report updates that have happened. I'll go through the SMS activity report, but in doing so, I'll cover another update that was also made, and that was in relation to the period. So previously, when someone selected this week or this month or this year, the date range would have remained, and that would have caused confusion, no doubt. But now when you select date range, you obviously get the date range from and to. When you select this year, this month, and so on, then the date range option will disappear. But in this scenario, let's say that we'll do a period over this year for the SMS activity reports. If we select me and another user there, and we also hit conclude team and do a run, what you can see now is that you'll get an overview of against different users how many SMSs have been sent within that period, and obviously in this instance that's just over this year, but obviously it could have been over a specific date range. So it's just a like for like really in terms of what we had for version 6, to make sure that there aren't any reports that exist in 6 that don't exist in 7 as a match, and also in relation to the period update change that's been made as well with regards to the date range from and to working how it does now. So that's the updates we made there. The last point to cover just relates to the recent items area. So if we click into recent items, what we've added is a last viewed column now. So you'll have obviously access to the records that you've previously been looking at opening, and also now you have an understanding as to when was the last time that you actually had to open that record. So that's the last view column that's been added to the recent items area, and that's the update we made there. As always, if you have any queries or feedback, please get in touch. I'll be keen to hear from you. Also, for those using Colleague 7, feel free to submit your enhancement requests via the support team or directly to me using the above email address. The next video will be the sprint plan for 18.10.02, and as always, that will contain a high-level overview on the items we intend to work on during that sprint. Thanks for watching.